Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Good morning. Welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Lisa Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm doing well today. And how about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. And I want to thank the listeners for tuning in. Today on The Voice of Yoga, we will talk about birth and the trauma that we must go through in order to begin our human life on this planet. We will discuss why the first birth creates such a resistance to the second birth of the individual with the divine. Swami will show how our chronological age can be used to mark points of passage with rites of passage for our apotheosis. He will also explain some of the tried and true methods of rebirthing our physical bodies in the life force to become children of the divine. So, Swami, I guess first what we need to look at is our first birth. So give us your take on that.
Yeah, you think about your first birth, you're in this utopian environment. You know, you're in the womb. Of course, you're in the dark, but you don't know the difference between light and dark. But everything is provided for us. And then all of a sudden, you're catapulted out of this environment, which is safe, familiar, comfortable, and known to you. And you're thrown into the light. And you're literally cut from your source of sustenance. And you're forced to breathe air on your own. So it's very traumatic. And, you know, we all have the memory of this trauma. And the whole concept of rebirthing your body in a different energy field has this sense of anxiety that is associated with it. And so it becomes a real barrier as to why would you want to separate from what's safe, familiar, comfortable, and known, and undertake, you know, the trauma, you know, and also, I mean, it's when you embark on this progressive cycle, one of the things that is not mentioned a lot anymore is the whole concept of the wound, you know, and this whole thing of the cutting of the heart, that it's not going to be something that is easy, let's put it that way. You know, because just like in our first birth, you know, our physical bodies had to be cut from the mother and then forced to breathe air on your own. In this second birth, and you think about, I don't know, I always think about, you know, the agony of the garden before the crucifixion of the body. You know, the symbolism that's out there implies that it's not going to be a cakewalk. Let's put it that way. That, you know, there is going to be some suffering. There's going to be the possibility of pain and discomfort that is going to accompany this new life. You know, and again, I think that comes under the balance of duality. You know, you can't have good without bad, kind of a thing. And so this whole concept of rebirthing your body in a different energy field, you know, is going to require this wounding on some level. Now, whether it's a physical wound or an emotional wound or whatever, the wound is an important part in this rebirthing of the body. And you know, just coming back to our first birth, you know, you do have to be cut from the mother. The whole thing of the umbilical cord has to be cut. And the other thing is that you're going from, one environment into something that's different. And the same is true when the human being goes from your attachment to the physical world to your attachment to the world of spirit. That it's kind of like, I look at it, it's almost like a vertical leap. Like our first birth, the patterning of your body looks for food, mother, and approval. And in this second birth, where you rebirth your body in the life force, there is a vertical leap. You go from the mouth then to the nose. Because one, you're using food to associate you with breath, the other you're using breath to associate you with prana. Mm-hmm. So it is a step up in this process of transcendence, and it is a conversion. That you're actually using a different source of sustenance for validation.
I have a question for you. We're talking about resistance from the first birth to the second birth, but then while you were talking about the umbilical cord, I had this visualization that, metaphorically speaking, would you say that the attachment that we have to the physical world is like the umbilical cord, right? So we have to cut our attachment to the physical world in order to rebirth our bodies in this other life force.
Yeah, exactly. And again, the first birth, the physical birth, when we become, this physical manifestation, that has tangibility. This second part of it is this cutting of the mind from its attachment to the physical world is something that does not have the same tangibility. But one of the significators oftentimes is the concept of the wound. That would be associated with. But it doesn't necessarily mean, just because you're in pain doesn't mean you're connected to spirit. See, the pain part is something that could be ongoing. It's kind of like, I always remember my mother used to say that if you have to get your arm amputated, you go in and you have them cut it off. Don't have them cut it off 1/4 of an inch at a time. Because every time they cut you, you have to go through this healing process. So the better you are educated with regard to what it is that you're going to attach to, because if that's one of the things why I think so many of us are in constant pain and suffering oftentimes, is that we get disconnected from something external that we're using to validate ourselves. And then we reattach to something external to validate ourselves. And then, of course, you lose that. And then you go through the wounding. You go through the suffering. And then you reattach to something that's external that you're going to have to get, disconnected from eventually anyway. So the secret to really being successful with this whole thing is to make sure that you have the right symbol, you have the right energy field lined up, so that when you do go through this period of wounding, that you graft your identity to the life force. And then, of course, it's like you got the arm amputated. So, yeah, you go through the healing, it's a done deal, but you never have to go back again. And that's one of the ways that I think that, a lot of us don't have that understanding. And so as a result, we're in perpetual cutting and healing and suffering and, this whole regressive cycle.
So it sounds like to me what we've talked about in other shows is that we have to have an understanding of what it is that we're going through. If we don't know that we are actually suffering and not being able to move forward spiritually, we never make that leap that you're talking about. Don't you agree that we would have to first you have to know that there's a problem, right? Isn't that one of the 12 steps or something? You have to know that there's a problem. Then from there you can go ahead and take those steps to move forward to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have to know there's a problem, but you also have to know that there's a solution. Because even, say, for example, if you look at the 12-step program, the unfortunate thing about the program is doesn't have the same precision that the yoga plan has. With regard to your solution, because most of those 12-step programs are specific. No, what's the specific? They are specific to a particular substance. And of course, there is no distinction between varying degrees of unnecessary dependencies. Whereas in the yoga model, it doesn't matter what your unnecessary dependency is. We're very specific about that we want to become addicted to the life force, that it is a different source of sustenance, a different energy field. And being able to substitute one unnecessary dependency for another unnecessary dependency kind of keeps you in this regressive cycle, so you don't really have the benefit of the progressive cycle. But having an understanding that there is a problem, but then also having a plan, which is what Kriya Yoga is. It's a plan prepared for us to make this quantum leap from air to prana. And it gives us the tools to move, from what's safe, familiar, comfortable, and known, and embark on the anxiety, the uncertainty of this unknown. Because one of the things that we always say, our bodies are like monkeys. And a monkey won't let go of one branch unless it has another branch in the other hand. So the easiest way to get out from underneath any unnecessary dependency is to substitute. But again, to substitute one unnecessary dependency for another unnecessary dependency is like changing seats on the Titanic. You may have a more comfortable seat, you may have a better view, but you're still on a sinking ship. So the whole intention of being able to be successful with this concept of rebirthing your body is that you want to make sure that you have the right energy field in your other hand, that you want to be connected to the life force, you want to be connected to this concept of God, this indivisible unified field, and not something that's dualistic.
I have kind of an interesting question for you. I just celebrated a birthday a couple of days ago, and today is my dad's birthday, so happy birthday to him. So, to me, celebrating a birthday, now with what I think I know, yoga style, I would want to celebrate the God that is in that person. So, can we still live in this dimension, if you will, and still celebrate our birthdays? It's not wrong to celebrate your birthday as long as we're celebrating the right thing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Your physical body is a big part of your process. And one of the things we say, you never forget where we came from. That growing psychologically and spiritually doesn't mean that you lose self-conscious awareness. It doesn't mean that your body now becomes unnecessary. It's an intricate part. But one of the things, that's important to understand is that there are changes that are going to take place. with this second birth, this whole thing of transcendence or transforming into a whole person. But your body will still be the vehicle, and you will still have reverence for your body, and you'll actually be able to grow chronologically with a sense of dignity, as opposed to the way that we do today. You know, as we start to get older, we are so youth-oriented, we are so attached to the body, that now the changes that are taking place on a chronological level, on a physiological level, are horrifying to us. You know, it's like we feel like we're losing at life as opposed to moving forward towards this other experience.
Well, I have a great question to ask you, but we're going to actually take a break right now, and so I'll ask you that when we come back. So listeners, we'll be back with you shortly after we hear a word from our sponsors.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate.
If you are looking for a samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. Thank you for joining our program. You are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. So, Swami, my question to you that I had before we took the break was, we saw this movie last night, and I believe it was called Wish I Was Here, and in it, this family struggles with this father who has become ill with cancer, and before he passes, he says to his son, "I am not afraid. I thought I would be afraid, but I'm not afraid." So that kind of reminded me when you were talking about chronologically aging, and I think sometimes we have to come to grips with the fear that we have of getting old. So celebrating birthdays doesn't have to be this fear of getting older, just celebrating the God that's within us.
Yeah, and I think like one of the things that we say, I mean, there's a difference between what was referred to as sons of men or children of men. I guess today would be more politically correct because they used the terms sons of men and sons of God. And possibly because of that is because the sun is a Mercury image, the boy. So it's the conscious mind that is literally rebirthed into the life force. So the conscious mind that's born of flesh is limited, whereas this conscious mind that is reborn into the life force is expansive. It opens up. It grows. And so, you know, if we had, you know, better leadership, if we were growing psychologically and spiritually, then chronological aging would be a completely different experience. You know, because your attachment to the physical body would be different than it is now. If body is all you identify with, it's a problem. But if the body is nothing more than a garment than who you are, puts on periodically, and your identity is totally aligned with a part of yourself that is eternal, then there really isn't much concern about your expiration date. You know, that the body is just a garment that who you are puts on periodically is very different than I am this physical body. And I don't know what's going to happen to me. But the benefit that comes with this apotheosis, with this rebirthing of the body in the life force, is that your identity transcends the limits of the body. But you don't lose respect for the physical body. In fact, your body is your temple. It's the vehicle. It now houses the life force. So it's a whole different experience.
I had said earlier in the description that we would talk about the tried and true methods of rebirthing our physical bodies. Where can we start?
Well, one of the things I always like to refer to is the Bible. There are a couple of references in the Bible to the whole thing of, I think John 3, like verses 3 to 6 or something. It's Jesus says something to the effect that, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." And then Nicodemus responds and he says, how can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter the second time into his mother's womb and be born? And then Jesus responds and says, "Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of flesh is flesh, and that which is born of spirit is spirit." That's really powerful to me. And of course, in yoga, this whole thing of brahmacharya, carrier of Brahman, that it's a practice to literally rebirth your body in the life force, to separate from your attachment to flesh or the physical world or duality. And one of the things that I did want to mention today is that today is April 29th, 2015, and the sun today is conjunct the eclipse that took place on April 29th, 2014. That was a year ago. And of course that's on a 2-year, 2-month and 28-day cycle. And then of course it's like, well, what does Taurus have to do with union with the divine? Because Taurus is so much to do with our values. And the whole thing that we're talking about is how do you get this other branch in your other hand? If you're going to leave what's safe, familiar, comfortable, and known, you want to have something in your hand that is going to be more reliable and more dependable than another branch in the same tree. And so the whole thing of using what we really do need as this symbol for validation, starting to change how we think about the things that are really important to us. And like we've been talking about in some of the earlier shows, this whole thing of a resource-based economy. Use what is really important to you as a symbol that you will internalize in your body, that will produce the feeling in your body that you're happy, that you're special, that you're good enough. And then, of course, once you have that image in your other hand, then, of course, you're going to have to purify your body. The whole thing of tried and true methods of rebirthing, they all include purification. You have to purge the body. Whether you like the symbolism or not, the original sin is a fact. The simple fact that our bodies come in with a pattern, and we look for food, mother, and approval for validation. And the whole concept of purging the body of this pattern isn't just a bunch of abstract, useless scholasticism. It's physics. This is how you can't get spirit in your body if you do not purify it. The body is the temple. And so, again, the physics of spirituality, but the simplicity of it. Because basically, you're getting rid of unnecessary dependencies. Sure, your body may respond as if it's in danger, but it's not in a real life-threatening situation. There's a big difference between what's imagined and what's real. Now, you may undergo the trauma, but by the same token, you can't get to this other experience.
Well, I know I can speak for myself in relation to purification, that when you stop putting chemicals in or on your body, eventually you really do start to think different. Like, you don't want to put anything on or in your body that's going to harm your physical body, because what harms your physical body eventually ends up harming your mind, right? I mean, that's how I think of it. And then, like you always say, it always comes down to what we desire. If you want to desire spirit, then we have to kind of go through these processes to become that.
Oh, absolutely. It's like attracts like, and you will not have sensitivity for something that's invisible and intangible if your body is longing for something that's visible and tangible or invisible and tangible. So the purification is an essential part in changing the frequency of your body. And again, you do go through a certain period of withdrawal, because the pattern of the body. And when you take something away from the body that it thinks it needs, it's like a little child, playing with a gun. It's like, whoa, give me that, and the child's crying. Well, you'll get over it. But it's very different than if it, shoots its foot off or something. It's like, whoa. But our bodies will respond as if we're in danger sometimes because you latch on to something. But the body doesn't have any power of discernment, and I think that's the important thing. And so a good tried and true method of rebirthing your body, requires that you use your mind, because your mind has vision. And then, like you noticed, and of course I would assume anybody would notice that undertakes this process, that there is direct relationship between your mind and your body. And changes that you make on a physical level will affect you psychologically, and changes that you're making psychologically will affect you physically. That's the relativity of the whole thing.
So it can happen. It's really not that hard. Once you set your mind to it that you want to purify and change your life, it's really easy to do. So anyway, Swami, I think we're at that point we need to start closing down our show today. So I would like to invite the listeners out there to visit our website. You can follow us on Pinterest and Twitter and Facebook. Also, don't forget the online classes you can access through the website, ipdtransform.com. And as a matter of fact, I do want to congratulate Swami on a beautiful new website. So please visit that. You guys will really enjoy it. It is absolutely wonderful. But keep those comments, questions, and curiosities coming, because we do enjoy hearing from you. Next week's going to be a great show. I believe we're going to celebrate National Prayer Day along with, I think, a full moon next week. So, Swami, any thoughts about next week's show?
Yeah, I think we were planning on doing the whole thing of that full moon, okay. but we will. I was thinking maybe the following week we could do the whole thing on prayer, because I already set up the whole thing on desire is the fire. Because that full moon has a couple of T-squares in it that I think could be really helpful for understanding ourselves. And so with that, we'll wish everybody a good day today, and namaste, and I'll give it back to you.
Sounds like a great show. So I want to thank the listeners for tuning in today to the Voice of Yoga. This is Lisa Winton along with Swami Jayananda Signing off. Have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.